I spent the next 3 days in feverish research. I used the stolen motorcycle with extreme caution, moving only at night and through side roads. I hid it in different places each day: abandoned warehouses, dark parking lots, remote alleys. But most of my time was spent in cheap internet cafes scattered throughout Tokyo, where one could rent a small booth for hours for a few hundred yen. These cafes were a refuge for the homeless, the fugitives, and everyone who wanted to disappear from sight. It was the perfect place for me. I sat in front of the computer screen, my reddened eyes from lack of sleep staring at the information I was gathering. I started by searching for the Asakura family. It was one of the oldest and most powerful Yakuza families in Tokyo, founded in the late 19th century. It had a long history of violence and power. The current boss was a man named Takeshi Asakura in his 60s. His pictures appeared in some old newspaper articles. A short man but with a frightening demeanor, his face full of scars and his eyes cold as ice. He was known for his cruelty and intelligence at the same time. Under Takeshi's leadership, the family's operations expanded to include everything: illegal gambling, prostitution, extortion, drug trafficking, and even some legitimate businesses like construction and real estate companies. The family controlled large parts of Shinjuku, Shibuya, and Roppongi. But what really caught my attention was an old article from 2018. It talked about a small scandal. The family was involved in a case related to money laundering through a construction company. But the case was suddenly closed and details were never mentioned. There was something strange about the way the case disappeared from the news. I dug deeper, using my knowledge of Japanese law. I found vague references to a certain judge who was responsible for the case, and to a prosecutor who suddenly disappeared from his position after a short period. There was also a reference to a bank account in Singapore, but the details were obscured. All of this was vague and frustrating. I didn't have enough information to understand the complete picture, but I felt there was something. A secret buried somewhere, a secret that Takeshi Asakura was willing to kill to hide. But how could I reach this secret? How could a hunted broke foreigner infiltrate a Yakuza family's operations and uncover their secrets? The answer came unexpectedly. Chapter 2. The Bait. On the morning of the 4th day, as I was leaving one of the internet cafes, I noticed a black car parked on the opposite street. It was a luxury car, the type used by Yakuza men. 2 men in black suits stood beside it, looking directly at me. I froze in place. They found me. Finally, they found me. One of the men raised his hand, signaling me to approach. It wasn't a clear threat, but a calm invitation. But I knew I didn't really have a choice. If I tried to run, they would catch me. And even if I succeeded in escaping this time, they would find me again. I took a deep breath and walked toward them, my heart pounding madly, but I tried to appear calm. When I got close, one of the men opened the rear door of the car. "Get in," he said in English, his voice calm but firm. I got in the car. I sat in the back seat and the 2 men sat in the front. The car drove off calmly through Tokyo's morning streets. No one spoke during the ride. I tried to track the route, but the driver was taking many turns, apparently to confuse me. After about half an hour, the car stopped in front of a huge building in an upscale area of the city. "Follow us," one of the men said. I got out of the car and looked at the building in front of me. It was a modern office tower looking completely legitimate. On the sign was written Asakura Group for Construction and Real Estate Development. They led me through the luxurious lobby to the elevator. We went up to the 20th floor, the top floor. When the elevator doors opened, I found myself in an elegant foyer with marble floors and expensive artwork on the walls. At the end of the foyer was a massive wooden door. One of the men knocked on the door, then opened it, signaling me to enter. I entered a spacious office overlooking Tokyo through huge glass windows. In the center of the office was a luxurious wooden desk, and behind it sat a man in his 60s wearing an elegant gray suit. Takeshi Asakura, the boss. He was shorter than he appeared in the pictures, but his presence was overwhelming. He looked at me with cold eyes, studying me silently for several long seconds. Then he pointed to a chair in front of the desk. "Sit, foreigner," he said in English, his voice hoarse but clear. I sat, trying to hide my trembling. Next to the desk stood another man, Kenji, the man I had brawled with at the gambling den. He was looking at me with a cold smile, a small bandage on his lip where my punch had hit him. "You caused us a lot of trouble, mister," Takeshi began. "Marwan. My name is Marwan," I answered, trying to make my voice sound steady. "Marwan," he repeated the name slowly. "A lawyer from Morocco, as our sources informed us. You came to Tokyo as a tourist, but now you're wanted by the police for stealing a very expensive motorcycle. My motorcycle, to be precise." He paused for a moment, then continued. "You also attacked one of my trusted men." He pointed to Kenji. "Under normal circumstances, someone like you would simply disappear. No one would ask about a broke foreign tourist who disappeared in Tokyo." I felt cold sweat dripping on my forehead. This was the end. But Takeshi wasn't finished yet. "But I'm a curious man. I want to know why. Why steal my motorcycle? Why attack my man? And why, instead of fleeing Tokyo as fast as possible, do you stay here and search for me on the internet?" I looked at the boss in astonishment. How did he know? He smiled a cold smile. "Oh yes, we know you've been searching for me. Those internet cafes you hide in, most of them pay us protection money. They have instructions to report anything interesting. And a foreigner frantically searching for the Asakura family. That's certainly interesting." I cursed myself internally. I was naive. Of course they had eyes everywhere. "So," Takeshi continued, "I'll ask you again, why? What do you want?" This was the moment of truth. I had to make a decision. Either surrender and wait for my fate, or gamble everything in one last attempt to survive. I chose to gamble. "I want to work for you," I said, my voice more confident than I felt. Complete silence filled the office. Kenji let out a sarcastic laugh, but Takeshi raised his hand, silencing him. "You want to work for me?" the boss repeated, the tone of amusement clear in his voice. "You, who stole from me and attacked my man, want to work for me?" "Yes," I answered. "I'm a lawyer specializing in international criminal law. I know Japanese laws well. I know how legal systems work, how to discover loopholes, how to protect assets. I can be useful to you." He looked at me in long silence, studying every word, every movement. Then he said, "Why would I need you? I already have lawyers, Japanese ones, who know the system better than you." "But they're Japanese," I said, "bound by culture, relationships, obligations. I'm a foreigner. No one knows me, no ties bind me. I can do things your Japanese lawyers can't do. I can be expendable if necessary." It was a strong argument, and I knew it. In the Yakuza world, having someone from outside, unknown, could be a valuable asset. Takeshi turned and looked out the window at the city stretching before him. He remained silent for long minutes, and I didn't dare move or speak. Finally, he turned back. "Kenji, what do you think?" Kenji looked at me with contempt. "I think he's a con man trying to save his skin. We should throw him in Tokyo Bay and end this." "Perhaps," Takeshi said. Then he looked at me. "But, I like risks sometimes. I'll give you a chance, Marwan. Only one chance. I'll test you. If you succeed, maybe, and I say maybe only, I'll consider using you. If you fail, or if you try to deceive me, they'll never find your body. Do you understand?" "I understand," I answered, feeling a wave of fear and hope together. "Good," Takeshi said. Then he pointed to Kenji. "Kenji will be responsible for you. He'll give you a task. Show us what you can do." Chapter 3. The Test. The next day, Kenji led me to a large warehouse in an industrial area on the outskirts of Tokyo. The place appeared abandoned, but inside there was intense activity. Dozens of men working, moving boxes, inspecting contents, recording numbers in ledgers. "This is one of our warehouses," Kenji explained, his voice cold. "We store here various goods, some legal, some not. Our problem is that the police have started suspecting this place. They have an informant somewhere, someone giving them information. We need to know who it is and get rid of him." He paused and looked at me. "But before that, we need to make sure our operations here are legally protected as much as possible. If the police raid the place, we want to be able to delay them, hide evidence, and present documents that look legitimate." He took out a huge folder of papers and threw it on a nearby table. "These are all the documents related to this warehouse. Contracts, licenses, shipping records, everything. Some are real, some are fake. Your task is to review everything, find the loopholes, and tell us how to protect ourselves better. I looked at the huge pile of papers. How much time do I have? 3 days, Kenji answered. If you can't finish the task or if your advice is useless, then you're useless to us, and you know what happens to useless things. Kenji left, leaving me alone with the mountain of documents. I took a deep breath and sat down. This was my chance, not just to survive, but to begin understanding how the Asakura family's operations worked from the inside. I started examining the documents carefully. They were complex and intertwined layers upon layers of shell companies, hidden bank accounts, and suspicious deals. But I was an expert in criminal law, and I had seen similar systems in previous cases. I continued working for hours, taking notes, drawing diagrams, connecting the dots. After the first day, I had understood the basic structure. The family was using a chain of shell companies to launder money from illegal operations, gambling, prostitution, drugs, and convert it into clean investments in real estate and construction. But there was a problem. The system was clever, but it wasn't perfect. There were obvious loopholes investigators could exploit. Some documents were poorly forged, and some deals were so suspicious they would immediately attract attention. On the second day, I started writing my report. I pointed out every loophole I found and suggested solutions. Some solutions were simple, improving the quality of forged documents. Some were complex, restructuring some companies to make them less obviously connected to the family. But while I was working, I noticed something interesting. There were repeated references to a certain bank account in Singapore, the same account I had seen mentioned in that old article about the money laundering scandal in 2018. The account was well hidden in layers of shell companies, but I was able to trace it thanks to my deep knowledge of international banking laws. This account was different from the other accounts. The amounts deposited in it were huge millions of dollars, but they weren't being used in the family's usual operations. They were being transferred elsewhere, but the final destination was obscured in the documents. This was strange. Why would Takeshi Asakura hide a special account even from his usual financial system? And where was this money going? I didn't mention this account in my report. I kept it to myself. I felt this might be the beginning thread to uncover the secret I was looking for. Chapter 4. Acceptance. On the third day, I submitted my report to Kenji. He sat and read it carefully, his face showing no expression. After an hour of silent reading, he closed the file and looked at me. "This is good," he said, and it was clear that admitting this was difficult for him. Better than I expected from a foreigner. "Thank you," I said, trying to hide my relief. "I'll take this to the boss. Wait here." Kenji left, and I remained waiting in the warehouse for long hours. I was tired, hungry, and tense. Was my report good enough? Would Takeshi accept it? Finally, Kenji returned with another man, an elegant man in his 40s, wearing medical glasses and carrying a leather briefcase. "This is Sato, our chief lawyer," Kenji introduced him. "The boss wanted him to review your report." Sato looked at me with curiosity, then opened his briefcase and took out my report. He spent several minutes flipping through the pages, sometimes nodding, sometimes frowning. Then he raised his eyes. "Most of what you wrote is correct and practical. Some suggestions, interesting. I hadn't thought of them before. You really know what you're doing." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Sato continued, "But is this everything you noticed? Didn't any other details escape you?" The question was a trap. I felt it. If I mentioned the Singapore account, I might reveal that I was spying more than I should. But if I lied and they later discovered I noticed something and didn't mention it, they would lose their trust in me. I decided on partial truth. I noticed some references to offshore accounts, but I didn't delve into them because they weren't a direct part of the warehouse operations. I focused on what was asked of me. Sato looked at me for a long time, then smiled slightly. Diplomatic answer. Good. The boss will be satisfied. That night, I was summoned again to Takeshi's office. This time, the boss was alone in the office. "Sit, Marwan," he said, his voice friendlier than the last time. I sat, my heart pounding hard. "Your report was good, really useful. Sato told me you understand the law deeply and have a sharp eye for details. These are qualities we value." He paused and poured 2 glasses of whiskey, pushing one toward me. "So I decided to accept you, temporarily. You'll work with us, but under strict supervision. Kenji will be responsible for you. Any wrong step and you'll pay the price. I took the glass, my hand trembling slightly. You won't regret your decision. He smiled a cold smile. I hope so, for your sake. We drank the whiskey in silence. Its taste was bitter in my mouth, but I swallowed it. I had entered the Serpent's den. Now I had to stay alive long enough to find the secret that would save me. Chapter 5. Yuki again. In the following weeks, my new life as a member of the Asakura family began. I wasn't a real member, of course. I wasn't Japanese, and I hadn't gone through the traditional joining rituals. I was more like an external consultant, a tool that could be used and disposed of when needed. They gave me a small room in a building owned by the family near their offices. It wasn't luxurious, but it was much better than the shabby hostel I had been hiding in. They also gave me a small salary, enough to live modestly, but not more. My work was varied. Sometimes I reviewed contracts and looked for legal loopholes. Sometimes I helped structure complex deals to hide money sources. And sometimes I simply translated documents from and to Arabic and English, taking advantage of being multilingual. Kenji watched me constantly. It was clear he didn't trust me and was probably waiting for any mistake I might make so he could get rid of me. But I was very careful. I followed the rules, did my work efficiently, and didn't ask too many questions. But at every opportunity I tried to gather information. I listened to conversations, watched money movements, tried to understand the complete structure of the Asakura Empire. I was looking for that secret, the thing I could use as a bargaining chip when the right moment came. Then one evening I saw her again. I was in the family offices working on some documents when I heard a familiar voice in the outer foyer. A feminine voice, soft, laughing at something someone had said. I raised my head and my heart started pounding hard. A young woman entered the office wearing an elegant dress, her long black hair cascading over her shoulders. Yuki. I froze in place. She also saw me, and for a moment I saw astonishment in her eyes, but she quickly hid it and replaced it with a cold smile. "Oh, the new foreigner," she said in English, her voice calm and controlled. "I heard about you, Marwan, isn't it?" I couldn't speak. All the anger I'd been suppressing inside me for all these weeks began to boil again. Kenji entered behind her. "Ah, Yuki. This is our new lawyer, Marwan. This is Yuki. She's a special friend of the boss." Special friend. The words were clear. Yuki wasn't just a thief working for the family. She was very close to Takeshi himself. "Pleased to meet you, Marwan," Yuki said, extending her hand. She was pretending we had never met before. I looked at her hand, then at her face. Every cell in my body was screaming to expose her, to tell everyone what she had done. But I knew that would be suicide. If she was indeed a special friend of Takeshi, she was protected. Any attack on her would be an attack on the boss himself. I shook her hand, trying to hide my anger. "Pleased to meet you too." She smiled widely, but her eyes were cold. "I hope you enjoy your time here in Tokyo. It's a dangerous city for careless foreigners." The threat was clear. She was warning me not to expose our previous relationship. "I'll be very careful," I answered, my voice barely controlled. Yuki left the office with Kenji, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts. Now I finally understood. Yuki wasn't just an ordinary worker in the theft network. She was close to the top, perhaps Takeshi's mistress herself. This explained why the theft operation was so professional, and why she was able to use my credit cards without fear of tracking. And this also meant something else. She had real power in the family. If she decided I had become a problem, she could get rid of me easily. I was now in a more dangerous position than I thought. Chapter 6. Discovering the first thread. In the following nights, I couldn't sleep. I was thinking about Yuki, about Takeshi, about this whole complex situation I found myself in. I was trapped in a web I couldn't escape from. If I tried to flee, they would find and kill me. If I stayed, I might be killed at any moment if I became useless or if they suspected my intentions. My only choice was to proceed with my original plan, find the secret that could protect me. But how? The information I was accessing was limited and the surveillance on me was constant. Then the opportunity came unexpectedly. One day, Sato, The family's chief lawyer asked me to help him with a complex case. One of the family's subsidiary companies was facing a tax investigation, and he needed someone who understood international laws to restructure some assets. I worked with him for days, studying documents, planning strategies. Sato was professional and smart, but he was also somewhat arrogant. He liked to boast about his knowledge and successes. One evening, while we were working in his office, he started telling me about some of his previous achievements. He talked about complex cases he had successfully resolved, and about judges and prosecutors he had convinced to close investigations against the family. The most difficult case I faced was in 2018, he said, pouring himself a glass of sake. There was a young, ambitious prosecutor named Takahashi. He was investigating money laundering operations linked to our construction company. He was very close to uncovering everything. He paused and took a sip, but we reached an understanding with him. We convinced him that pursuing the case wouldn't be in his personal or professional interest. How did you convince him? I asked, trying to appear merely curious. He smiled cunningly. Let's just say we have our own methods. Some people can be bought with money, some with threats. Takahashi was the first type. We transferred a large amount to an offshore account for him, and suddenly he lost his enthusiasm for the case. An offshore account. My heart started pounding hard. An account in Singapore? I asked, as if guessing randomly. Sato looked at me with surprise. How did you know? I realized I might have said more than I should. Just a guess. Most offshore accounts for bribes are in Singapore or the Cayman Islands. He seemed convinced. True, yes, it was in Singapore, the same account we use for such arrangements. And this account is still active? I asked, trying to appear curious only from a technical standpoint. Of course, Sato said. We use it regularly. Only the boss knows all the details, but Kenji and I have limited access to it when needed. I had obtained important information. There was an account in Singapore used to bribe government officials. If I could access the details of this account and the transfer records, I would have damning evidence that could put Takeshi Asakura in prison for many years. But how do I access this information? It was surely kept in a very secure place, perhaps in a safe in Takeshi's office itself. I needed a plan, a tight and very dangerous plan. Chapter 7. The First Infiltration. I spent following weeks planning carefully. I needed to enter Takeshi's office and access his safe, but this was nearly impossible. The office was protected by surveillance cameras, guards, and sophisticated alarm systems. Takeshi was a paranoid man who knew he had many enemies. But every system has its loopholes. I started noticing the building's daily routine. When guards left their positions, when cameras were disabled for maintenance, when the office was empty. I found there was a small window about 1 hour every week when Takeshi went to an important external meeting. Most guards were with him and the building was almost empty. This was my only opportunity. But I needed something else, a way to open the safe. I wasn't an expert in lockpicking, but I knew someone who might help me. One day, while I was in the warehouse reviewing some documents, I talked to one of the workers there, an old man named Yoshida, who had been working for the family for decades. He had been kind to me from the beginning, perhaps because I was the only one who treated him with respect. Yoshida-san, I said to him one day, I heard you were in the past an expert in opening locks. He looked at me cautiously. Where did you hear that? People talk, I said with a smile. Don't worry, I'm just impressed by the skill. It's an art, isn't it? The old man smiled, pleased with the compliment. It was my skill in my youth. Now my fingers are old and slow. But you still remember how it works, right? Of course, he said proudly. Some things are never forgotten. I started visiting him regularly, bringing him food and drink and listening to his stories. Slowly he began to trust me and teach me some basics. He didn't know why I wanted to learn, and I was careful not to arouse his suspicions. After weeks of training, I became able to open simple locks. But Takeshi's safe wouldn't be simple. It was most likely a modern electronic safe requiring a code or fingerprint. I needed more information. And here I decided to risk something very dangerous. Getting closer to Yuki. Chapter 8. A dangerous game. Getting closer to Yuki wasn't easy. She avoided me most of the time, perhaps because she didn't want anyone to discover our previous relationship, but I was insistent. One evening when I saw her leaving the building alone, I followed her. She was walking toward her car in the private parking lot. "Yuki," I called to her. She stopped and turned, a look of anger in her eyes. "What do you want?" I approached her. "We need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about," she said in a cold voice. "I think we have a lot," I said. "You stole all my money from me, you ruined my life, and now I find myself stuck in this place working for the man who I assume is your lover." She slapped me hard. Pain exploded in my cheek, but I didn't move. "Don't you dare talk about the boss that way," she whispered angrily. "You don't know anything about our relationship." "Then teach me," I said, my voice calm. "I want to understand. Why did you do what you did? Was I just a random target?" She looked at me for a long time, and for a moment I saw something in her eyes, perhaps regret or perhaps just exhaustion. "It wasn't personal," she finally said, her voice calmer. "It was business. We target wealthy foreign tourists. You were in the wrong place at the wrong time." "But I wasn't wealthy," I said. "Everything you took was all I had." She turned her face away. "How was I supposed to know? You looked like an ordinary tourist carrying cash and credit cards. I did my job and destroyed my life in the process. And here you are, alive, working for the family, earning money," she said. "Worse things have happened to other people." She was right in a twisted way. I was lucky to still be alive. "Listen," she said, her voice slightly softer. "I'm sorry for what happened to you, really. But this is the world we live in. You're either strong or you're a victim. I chose to be strong. And Takeshi, what exactly is your relationship with him?" She smiled a sad smile. "That's none of your business." "I'm just curious," I said. "You seem very close to him. Closer than just an ordinary employee." She looked at me cautiously. "Why are you asking? What's your game, Marwan?" "There's no game," I lied. "I'm just trying to understand the environment I'm working in. Know who the important players are." "Well, if you want to stay alive, stop asking questions," she said. "Do your work, stay within your limits, and don't try to be too clever." She opened her car door. Before she got in, she turned to me one more time. "One last piece of advice, Marwan. The boss doesn't fully trust anyone, not even me. If he suspects you for 1 second, he won't hesitate to get rid of you. Be careful." Then she got in her car and left, leaving me standing in the parking lot, my thoughts racing. I didn't get the information I wanted about the safe, but I got something else. A deeper understanding of Yuki. She wasn't just a heartless criminal, she was a woman trapped in a world of violence and betrayal, trying to survive any way possible. And this made me think, perhaps I could use her not as an enemy but as a potential ally. But how? The answer would come in a way I never expected.